Another street rat who doesn't know his place. Brad Michaels grabbed Marcus Johnson by his collar and slammed him against the locker room wall. The janitor's cleaning supplies clattered across the floor as the gym members raised their phones to record. Brad's championship rings glinted under the fluorescent lights as he dragged the older black man toward the octagon. "Let's see how tough you are when you're not hiding behind a mop, old man." Marcus tried to maintain his dignity despite the assault, his weathered hands steady even as Brad shoved him toward the cage. The gym members formed a circle, their phones capturing every second of the humiliation. Have you ever witnessed someone being publicly degraded and humiliated, only to discover they possessed hidden skills that would change everything? Like and subscribe to see justice served in the most satisfying way possible. 5 hours earlier, the alarm buzzed at 5:30 a.m. in Marcus Johnson's modest one-bedroom apartment. The 52-year-old former military man rose with the discipline that never left him, brewing coffee while NPR played softly in the background. A news segment about veteran support programs drifted through the air as Marcus buttoned his work shirt. The walls of his apartment told a story few knew. Family photos dominated one wall, Marcus in his younger days, standing proudly in military dress blues, another showing him holding his late wife Sandra's hand as she lay in a hospital bed. Her battle with cancer had ended 3 years ago, leaving behind mountains of medical debt that still haunted him. "Morning, Dad," his daughter Alicia said through the phone as he made his daily call. "How's the job hunt going?" "Still looking, baby girl," Marcus replied, glancing at the engineering degree hanging on his wall beside his military honors. "The maintenance work pays the bills until I find something in my field." "You'll find something soon. You're the smartest person I know," Alicia said. Her voice carried the pride of a daughter who had watched her father sacrifice everything to put her through medical school. Marcus had been many things in his life: a decorated Marine Corps veteran, a combat engineer with specialized training, a devoted husband, a dedicated father. Now, at 52, he was the invisible man who cleaned Elite MMA, the most prestigious fighting gym in Chicago. As he left his apartment, Marcus exchanged greetings with Mrs. Rodriguez from next door. "Morning, Mr. Johnson. My sink is working perfectly now. I don't know how to thank you enough." "Just being neighborly, ma'am," he replied, with a warm smile that showed the man behind the janitor's uniform. Respected, valued, but only outside the walls of Elite MMA. Hidden in his gym bag was a worn Department of Defense ID, face down beneath his work clothes. His government-issued phone remained silent most days, used only for his weekly check-ins with his former commanding officer. A small news clipping about his unit's classified operations in Afghanistan lay forgotten at the bottom of the bag. An unread text from General Mitchell asking about his availability for a special advisory role had come in 3 days ago. Marcus had chosen this gym deliberately. Elite MMA was only 2 blocks from the Veterans Affairs office, where he had a meeting scheduled later that day about a specialized engineering position with the department. The cleaning job had been meant as temporary work, 6 months at most. That was 18 months ago. Inside his locker at the gym, carefully hidden from view, lay a faded photograph of a younger Marcus standing next to Muhammad Ali. The boxing gloves they'd worn that day were stored carefully in a fireproof box under his bed at home, along with medals from competitions few people remembered. Brad Michaels owned Elite MMA with the arrogant confidence of someone who had never truly been tested. At 38, he had built a reputation as a ruthless trainer who produced champions through fear and intimidation. His 5 championship belts hung in glass cases near the entrance, reminding everyone of his former glory. The local press called him the Kingmaker. Fighters who trained under him often went on to professional success, though few spoke fondly of the experience afterward. What members didn't see were the discarded fighters who couldn't endure his methods, the emotional abuse, the dangerous training practices, the racism thinly veiled as motivation. Brad's record with black fighters was particularly troubling. He'd been quietly investigated twice for discrimination, but had enough connections to make the complaints disappear. When Marcus had applied for the maintenance position, Brad had barely looked at his resume. "Just keep the place clean and stay out of my way," he'd said, not bothering to ask about the military service or engineering degree listed prominently on his application. For 18 months, Marcus had done exactly that. He arrived early, worked diligently, and remained invisible. He watched as Brad built a social media empire around elite MMA, amassing millions of followers who celebrated his tough approach to training. The gym's TikTok account had exploded recently, featuring clips of Brad toughening up his fighters with methods that bordered on abuse. Today was different. Marcus had submitted his 2 weeks' notice that morning. The VA position was practically guaranteed, an engineering role that would utilize his military experience and education. As he went about his cleaning duties, there was a lightness in his step that hadn't been there before. That's when he overheard Brad berating Jamal, a promising 19-year-old fighter from the South Side. "You're embarrassing me in front of these sponsors," Brad screamed, shoving the young man against the cage.
"Maybe you should go back to your hood if you can't handle real training."
Marcus paused his mopping, the words cutting through his practiced indifference. Jamal reminded him too much of the young Marines he'd mentored, talented, driven, but vulnerable to the wrong kind of leadership. "Sir," Marcus said quietly, approaching them, "maybe he just needs a different technique. His footwork is solid, but his guard drops when he—" Brad whirled around, his face contorted with rage and disbelief. "Did I ask for your opinion, janitor? Get back to your mop before I find someone who knows their place." Marcus nodded and turned away, but not before making eye contact with Jamal, offering an encouraging nod that said more than words could. Throughout the day, Marcus continued his duties while Brad's behavior worsened. The trainer was showing off for potential sponsors, wealthy businessmen who had come to see the elite MMA experience firsthand. Brad's Instagram live session had been running for over an hour, with thousands of viewers watching him transform boys into champ. "This is what separates the weak from the warriors," Brad announced to his phone camera as he pushed another fighter beyond reasonable limits. Marcus watched silently, the engineer in him analyzing the flaws in Brad's techniques, the veteran in him noting the psychological damage being inflicted, and the father in him wanting to protect these young men from unnecessary pain. As evening approached, the gym began emptying. The sponsors had made their decision to back Elite MMA with a 7-figure deal, impressed by Brad's no-nonsense approach. Brad celebrated by opening expensive champagne in his office, while Marcus cleaned the training mats, invisible as always. That's when everything changed. Marcus was wiping down equipment near the octagon when Brad emerged from his office, clearly intoxicated from celebration, with 3 sponsors and several gym members in tow. "Still here, old man," Brad called out, his words slightly slurred. "Don't you have some toilets to clean?" Marcus continued working, not engaging. This only seemed to irritate Brad further. "Hey, I'm talking to you," Brad approached, standing uncomfortably close. "What were you saying earlier about fighting techniques? You think you know something about MMA?" "No, sir," Marcus replied calmly, "just finishing up my work." Brad looked back at his entourage, playing to the audience. "You know what I think? I think we've got ourselves a backseat coach. Probably watches UFC on his little TV and thinks he's an expert." One of the sponsors chuckled, phone already recording the interaction. Another member began an Instagram live capturing the confrontation. The viewership counter started at 50. "What do you say, janitor? Want to show us your moves?" Brad's tone grew darker. "Or are you just another talker who can't back it up?" Marcus stood up straight, towel in hand. "I'm just here to clean, Mr. Michaels. My shift ends in 20 minutes. Brad's eyes narrowed. "Acting suspicious now, aren't we? I bet you've been stealing equipment. Empty your pockets." The accusation came out of nowhere. Several gym members looked uncomfortable, but no one intervened. "I haven't taken anything, sir," Marcus replied, his military composure evident. "Probably selling our supplements on the street," Brad continued, escalating his accusations. "I've seen your kind before." The Instagram live viewership climbed to 500. Comments began flooding in, some questioning Brad's behavior, others egging him on. Brad stepped closer, invading Marcus's personal space. "You smell like you've been in my protein powder stash." The accusation was absurd, but the pattern was familiar. Marcus had seen this technique used against others. Baseless accusations that escalated until the victim reacted, giving the aggressor justification for further action. "I think you should step back, sir," Marcus said quietly. Brad grabbed Marcus's work bag and dumped the contents on the floor. "Let's see what you've been taking." Matched depression items scattered across the gym floor, his lunch container, a change of clothes, his military novel, and his wallet. The Department of Defense ID slid under a bench, unseen. Match description of someone who's been stealing from cars in the parking lot, Brad announced to the growing audience, now completely fabricating accusations. Security cameras caught someone who looks just like him. The viewers on Instagram Live hit 5,000. Comments were coming in so fast they blurred on the screen. 2 more gym members began recording from different angles. Brad kicked Marcus's belongings, deliberately stepping on his wallet. What's next? You gonna claim you're some kind of fighter too? A tough guy? Marcus remained silent, his jaw tight as he watched his late wife's photo being crushed under Brad's expensive training shoe. You know what? Brad announced, looking directly into the nearest camera. Let's settle this. You're so interested in what goes on in my ring, get in. Marcus shook his head. I'm not fighting you, Mr. Michaels. Brad's face darkened. He grabbed Marcus by the collar and shoved him toward the octagon. It wasn't a request, Janitor. Either you get in the ring or you're fired, and I'll make sure you never work in this neighborhood again. The surrounding crowd had grown to nearly 30 people. No one intervened as Brad physically forced Marcus toward the cage, shoving him against the fence. I've got bills to pay and a daughter to support, Marcus said quietly. I can't lose this job. Should have thought about that before you tried to coach my fighters, Brad sneered. Now you've got 2 choices. Get in the cage and last 1 minute with me, or clear out your locker and don't come back. The Instagram Live counter hit 50,000 viewers. Comments were flying so fast they were unreadable. Someone had shared the stream to a popular fighting forum, and viewers were pouring in. Marcus looked around the gym, at the young fighters watching silently, at the sponsors recording everything, at the life he'd built from the ashes of his past. With deliberate calm, he stepped into the octagon. Brad grinned triumphantly, turning to the cameras. Watch me teach this janitor a lesson about respecting his betters. Someone get him some gloves. A gym employee reluctantly handed Marcus a pair of worn training gloves. They felt familiar in his weathered hands. "Oh, minute," Brad announced, playing to the cameras. Ever wondered, what happens when a person who has been protected, pressured? Marcus nodded silently. And see, he made a sweeping gesture. You're gone. Marcus nodded silently as he tightened the gloves. Brad stepped into the cage, confident and theatrical as he addressed his growing online audience. Ever wondered what happens when a professional fighter faces off against a regular person? Today we find out. Like and share if you want to see more real-world applications of MMA. The gym fell silent as Brad circled Marcus, who stood perfectly still in the center of the octagon. What's wrong, old man? Scared? Brad taunted, throwing a few flashy punches that stopped inches from Marcus's face. Maybe you should be cleaning the ring instead of standing in it. Marcus didn't respond, didn't flinch. His breathing remained steady, his eyes focused. Brad's theatrics continued for the cameras. This, ladies and gentlemen, is why you need proper training. Look at his stance. Completely open, no protection, no... Before Brad could finish his sentence, Marcus moved. It wasn't just any movement. It was practiced, precise, professional. Marcus stepped forward, pivoting slightly as his left hand created a momentary distraction. His right hand followed with a textbook cross that connected perfectly with Brad's jaw. The sound echoed through the suddenly silent gym. Brad Michaels, 5-time champion and social media sensation, crumpled to the mat, unconscious before he hit the ground. The gym exploded into chaos. Oh my God, did you see that? He's out cold. Who is this guy? Phones raised higher as people crowded around the cage. The Instagram Live viewership surged past 100,000. 2 trainers rushed to Brad's side as Marcus calmly removed the gloves, placing them neatly by the cage door before stepping out. Someone call an ambulance, shouted one of the sponsors, still recording everything. Marcus moved quietly toward his scattered belongings, beginning to gather them from the floor. His face showed no emotion, no triumph, no anger, just the composed efficiency of someone completing a task. That's when the gym door burst open. A commanding voice cut through the commotion. That will be enough. Every head turned to see 3 men in tailored suits entering the gym. The leader, a distinguished older man with military bearing, walked directly toward the gathered crowd. I'm looking for Master Sergeant Marcus Johnson, he announced. The crowd parted silently, revealing Marcus kneeling on the floor, collecting his scattered belongings. The man's face broke into a warm smile. There you are, old friend. Marcus looked up, surprise finally breaking through his composure. General Mitchell? The Instagram Live comments exploded. Did he say General? Master Sergeant? Who is this janitor? General Robert Mitchell, 3 stars visible on his uniform beneath his open suit jacket, approached Marcus and extended his hand. Sorry I'm late. Been trying to reach you for days. Marcus accepted the handshake, rising to his feet with the instinctive respect of a soldier greeting a superior officer. Sir, I wasn't expecting you until tomorrow. Plans changed. The Secretary of Defense moved up the timeline. We need you in Washington sooner than expected. The gym had fallen completely silent, everyone straining to hear this unexpected conversation. Washington? One of the trainers finally spoke up. Why would they need a janitor in Washington? General Mitchell turned, eyebrow raised. Janitor? Is that what you think he is? He looked back at Marcus with disbelief. You haven't told them? Marcus shrugged slightly. Wasn't relevant to cleaning floors, sir. The general shook his head, a mix of amusement and exasperation on his face. Master Sergeant Marcus Johnson is one of the most decorated combat engineers in Marine Corps history. 26 years of distinguished service. Bronze Star with Valor, Purple Heart, and before that, he paused, looking around the gym at the stunned faces. Before that, he was the, in 1988, Olympic alternate for the U.S. Best boxing team. Trained under Angelo Dundee, sparring partner to champions. Someone in the crowd gasped audibly. He's also one of the Pentagon's most valued consultants on specialized defense systems, General Mitchell continued, which is why the Secretary has been trying to get him back to Washington. The President specifically requested him for this project. One of the gym members had rushed to a computer and was frantically searching online. Holy shit, it's true. Marcus Johnson. Olympic boxing. Military engineering. There are classified projects he worked on that aren't even fully disclosed. The Instagram Live viewership had rocketed past 250,000. Comments were coming in so fast they blurred into a continuous stream of text. The hashtag JanitorCo was already trending. Wait, one of the sponsors said, looking confused. If he's all that, why is he working as a janitor here? Marcus finally spoke, his voice quiet but carrying through the silent gym. My wife needed specialized cancer treatments. Insurance wouldn't cover experimental procedures. I took what work I could find close to her hospital. General Mitchell placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. And he turned down 6-figure defense contracts to stay by her side. That's the kind of man he is. After she passed, Marcus continued, I stayed to pay off the medical debt and help my daughter through medical school. She graduates next month. A small, proud smile finally appeared on his face. Dr. Alicia Johnson. One of the young fighters who had been filming pushed forward. But, you've been here cleaning for almost 2 years. You never said anything, even when Brad... He trailed off, looking at the still unconscious trainer being tended to by paramedics who had just arrived. Marcus shrugged. It was just a job. I didn't need recognition. General Mitchell's phone buzzed. He checked it and his eyebrows rose. Well, you're getting recognition now. That clip of you dropping this fellow has gone viral. The secretary just texted me about it. Marcus looked troubled for the first time. Sir, I didn't mean to cause problems. Are you kidding? The general replied. The secretary said, and I quote, that's exactly the man we need heading up the new combat training program. Another suited man approached, handing Marcus his Department of Defense ID and a file that had spilled from his bag. I believe these are yours, Master Sergeant. The gym members stared at the classified folder with its distinctive red border and government seals. The reality of who had been quietly cleaning their gym for nearly 2 years began to sink in. The paramedics had managed to revive Brad, who was now sitting up on a stretcher, holding an ice pack to his jaw. His eyes widened as he took in the scene. The suited government officials, the deference everyone was suddenly showing to his janitor. What? What's happening? Brad mumbled through a swollen jaw. General Mitchell glanced at him dismissively. What's happening is that you assaulted a decorated veteran and former Olympic-level boxer, and about 500,000 people just watched you get exactly what you deserved. The paramedics wheeled Brad toward the ambulance as Marcus spoke quietly with General Mitchell and his associates. The gym remained packed with stunned members, all still recording. At that moment, the door opened again. A woman in a sharp suit entered, flanked by 2 uniformed police officers. "Mr. Michaels?" she called out, spotting Brad on the stretcher. "Who's asking?" One of Brad's trainers replied defensively. She held up a badge. "Special Agent Rebecca Torres, FBI Civil Rights Division. We've been investigating complaints against Elite MMA for discriminatory practices, unsafe training methods, and now, apparently, assault." The officers moved toward Brad, who was trying to sit up on the stretcher. "Brad Michaels, we have multiple complaints filed against you and your establishment," Agent Torres continued, her voice carrying through the now silent gym. "And now we have video evidence of you assaulting an employee and forcing him into a physical confrontation against his will." "He hit me," Brad protested weakly, pointing at Marcus. "After you physically assaulted him, threatened his employment, destroyed his personal property, and coerced him into a ring," Agent Torres replied coolly. "All of which was broadcast live to," she checked her phone, "currently 478,000 viewers and counting." One of the officers approached Brad. "Sir, once you've received medical clearance, we'll need you to come with us to answer some questions." Brad looked around frantically. "This is ridiculous! I own this place! Someone call my lawyer!" "Your lawyer will definitely be needed," Agent Torres replied. "We have 17 formal complaints from former fighters, 11 of whom are minorities who claim you specifically targeted them with racist abuse." The hashtag Elite MMA Exposed began trending alongside Janitor KO as viewers dug into Brad's history, finding and sharing testimonials from former fighters about their experiences. Agent Torres turned to Marcus. "Mr. Johnson, we'll need your statement as well." Before Marcus could respond, Master Sergeant Johnson is being called to Washington on matters of national security. I'm sure he'll cooperate fully, but his departure cannot be delayed. Agent Torres recognized the general's rank and nodded respectfully. "Of course, we have plenty of video evidence for now. Perhaps we can arrange a video deposition later this week." Brad was becoming increasingly agitated on the stretcher. "You can't do this to me! Do you know who I am? I've trained champions!" "You've also violated federal civil rights laws," Agent Torres replied calmly. "Created a hostile work environment based on racial discrimination and committed assault on camera. Your reputation won't help you here." Brad's phone was buzzing continuously. His manager had already seen the viral video and was desperately trying to reach him. Sponsors were sending termination notices for their contracts. The hashtag Boycott Elite MMA was trending in 3 states. "It seems your social media presence is quite active tonight, Mr. Michaels," Agent Torres noted, "though perhaps not in the way you'd prefer." Marcus had finished gathering his belongings and stood quietly beside General Mitchell, seemingly uncomfortable with being the center of attention. One of the young fighters approached him hesitantly. "Sir, Master Sergeant, I'm sorry we never stood up for you." "We should have." Marcus placed a hand on the young man's shoulder. "Standing up to authority is difficult. I understand that better than most." "The gym?" Another fighter asked. "What happens to us now?" Marcus glanced at Brad, who was still arguing with the officers as they prepared to transport him to the hospital. Elite MMA doesn't belong to just one person. It's the fighters who give it value. Agent Torres overheard this and nodded. "The FBI isn't here to shut down the gym. Our investigation is focused on Mr. Michaels and his discriminatory practices, not the establishment itself." General Mitchell checked his watch. "Marcus, our transport leaves in 20 minutes. We need to move." Marcus nodded, then turned to the gathered fighters one last time. "Remember, true strength isn't about dominating others. It's about discipline, respect, and knowing when to fight." He looked pointedly at Brad, and when not to. As Marcus prepared to leave with General Mitchell and his team, Brad called out from the stretcher. "This isn't over, Johnson. I'll sue you for everything you've got." Marcus paused and turned back. For the first time, the gym saw a glimpse of the warrior behind the humble exterior. "Mr. Michaels, you just assaulted a Pentagon consultant on camera in front of 500,000 witnesses. I suggest you worry less about lawsuits and more about the federal charges you're facing." The gym erupted in applause as Marcus walked out, followed by General Mitchell and his team. Outside, a black SUV with government plates waited. As Marcus approached it, his phone rang. It was his daughter, Alicia. "Dad, are you okay? You're all over social media. Someone from my med school just sent me a video of you knocking out some guy." "I'm fine, baby girl," Marcus replied, smiling slightly. "Just a little excitement before a career change. I'll explain everything later." "Career change? What do you mean?" "It seems I've been invited to Washington. Something about a new combat training program." He glanced at General Mitchell, who nodded confirmation. "The Johnson Combat Discipline Protocol," the general clarified. "The Secretary wants it implemented across all branches of service." As Marcus entered the government vehicle, he looked back at elite MMA one last time. Through the windows, he could see fighters gathered in groups, talking animatedly. Some were already taking down Brad's championship photos. Others were on their phones, undoubtedly spreading the story further. The Instagram Live that had captured everything had ended, but the recorded video was spreading across every platform. Janitor Co. had become the #1 trending topic nationally. General Mitchell's phone buzzed again. He checked it and chuckled. "What is it, sir?" Marcus asked. "The president just watched the video. He wants to meet you personally when we arrive in Washington." As the SUV pulled away, Marcus Johnson left behind his life as an anonymous janitor. The man who had quietly endured 18 months of disrespect was gone. In his place sat Master Sergeant Johnson, boxing champion, combat engineer, and soon-to-be architect of a new era in military combat training. Behind them, the elite MMA sign flickered in the darkness, its future uncertain. 3 months later, the federal courthouse in Chicago was packed to capacity. News vans lined the street outside as reporters jostled for position near the entrance. Inside, Marcus Johnson sat on the witness stand, his testimony drawing to a close. He wore a crisp suit now, the janitor's uniform long gone. His bearing was still military precise, but there was a new confidence in his posture. "And you had no previous altercations with Mr. Michaels prior to the incident?" the prosecutor asked. "No, sir," Marcus replied. "I kept to myself and did my job." Brad Michaels sat at the defense table, his former arrogance replaced by nervous fidgeting. His social media empire had collapsed overnight. The viral video of him assaulting Marcus and then being knocked out had accumulated over 50 million views across platforms. On the courtroom screens, the video evidence played again. Multiple angles captured by gym members showed the full sequence of events: Brad's escalating harassment, the assault, the forced entry into the ring, and the single punch that ended it all. The jury watched intently. Several members couldn't hide their satisfaction as Brad hit the mat in the video. "The prosecution rests, Your Honor," the attorney said. 3 hours later, the verdict was read. "On the charge of assault and battery, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of workplace discrimination, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of creating a hostile work environment, we find the defendant guilty." Brad's head sank lower with each pronouncement. The judge cleared his throat. "Mr. Michaels, your actions represent the worst kind of abuse of power. You used your position to demean and assault an employee based on racial prejudice and a misguided sense of superiority." He shuffled his papers and continued. "I sentence you to 18 months in federal prison, followed by 5 years of probation. Additionally, you are prohibited from owning or operating any athletic training facility for a period of 10 years. Outside the courthouse, Marcus faced a wall of reporters. "Master Sergeant Johnson, how does it feel to get justice? Will you be returning to Chicago after your work in Washington? Is it true that your training protocol is being adopted nationwide?" Marcus answered with characteristic humility. "Justice was served today, not just for me, but for everyone who has faced discrimination in silence. As for my work, I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve my country again in a new capacity." The sign above the entrance now read, "Johnson Combat Fitness." The former elite MMA had been completely transformed. Inside, the walls that once displayed Brad's championships now featured inspirational quotes about discipline and respect. Photos showed diverse groups of fighters training together. A framed newspaper article highlighted the gym's transformation from scandal to success, how Johnson Combat became a model for inclusive training. Jamal, the young fighter Brad had been berating that fateful day, now served as head trainer. Under his leadership, complaint rates had dropped by 67%, while membership had increased by 89%. A government-sponsored program had placed 30 veterans in training positions throughout the facility. 15 former elite MMA trainers had been terminated after investigations revealed their participation in discriminatory practices. On the main training floor, a monitor displayed the Johnson Protocol, training principles focused on respect, discipline, and technique rather than intimidation and fear. In Washington, Marcus testified before a congressional committee on military training reforms. The culture of any organization starts at the top, he explained to the assembled lawmakers. When leaders demand respect rather than earning it, they create environments where abuse thrives and talent is suppressed. The hearing was being broadcast nationally. Among the viewers was Brad Michaels, watching from the common room of a federal prison, his former empire now a cautionary tale in sports management courses. 1 year later, Marcus Johnson's office at the Pentagon featured a wall of achievements. His military honors were displayed alongside his new civilian accolades: Reformer of the Year from Military Training Monthly, Changemaker from Sports Ethics Quarterly, and a presidential commendation for his work on training reform. On his desk sat a framed photograph of his daughter Alicia in her medical school graduation cap and gown, standing proudly next to her father. Another showed Marcus with his late wife Sandra, her memory honored by the Sandra Johnson Medical Scholarship for Disadvantaged Students that Marcus had established with part of his settlement money. The Johnson Combat Discipline Protocol had been implemented in all 5 branches of the military, with early results showing a 43% reduction in training injuries and a 58% increase in recruitment from minority communities. A documentary about Marcus's journey from janitor to Pentagon advisor had just won a prestigious film festival award. His story had become a cultural touchpoint for discussions about hidden talent, second chances, and the power of dignity in the face of discrimination. In Chicago, Johnson Combat Fitness had become a model for inclusive athletic training. The gym offered free classes to at-risk youth and veterans transitioning to civilian life. Several national chains had adopted similar approaches after seeing the success of the Johnson model. Brad Michaels' ex-wife had given an interview discussing how his behavior at home mirrored his public persona. He ruled through fear, she explained. When that stopped working, he had nothing left. She had filed for divorce the day after the viral incident and now worked as an advocate for domestic abuse survivors. Marcus stood at the window of his Pentagon office looking out over the Capitol. His phone buzzed with a notification. The president was waiting to discuss expanding the Johnson Protocol to police academies nationwide. As he gathered his materials for the meeting, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought him here. From Olympic hopeful to Marine, from grieving husband to anonymous janitor, from viral sensation to national reformer, each chapter had prepared him for the next in ways he couldn't have imagined. In his pocket, he carried a small reminder of where he'd come from, his old elite MMA maintenance badge. Not as a souvenir of humiliation, but as a reminder that dignity doesn't come from titles or recognition. It comes from within. The final scene showed Marcus visiting a memorial for fallen Marines. He stood quietly, paying his respects to comrades lost over the years. A young Marine approached hesitantly. "Master Sergeant Johnson, I trained under your protocol at Paris Island. I just wanted to say thank you. It changed how I see myself as a warrior and as a person." Marcus nodded, the weight of his influence evident in his expression. "Remember, the measure of your strength isn't how hard you can hit. It's knowing when to fight, when to walk away, and always maintaining your dignity regardless of how others treat you." As he walked back toward his government vehicle, he passed a group of young people watching something on their phones. They were viewing the viral video that had changed everything, over 100 million views now. A cultural moment that had sparked national conversations about respect, hidden talent, and the dangers of judging others by their occupation. One of the teens looked up and recognized him. "Hey, you're the janitor who knocked out that racist trainer." Marcus smiled. "Among other things, yes." "That was awesome," the teen said. "You showed him what real strength looks like." "Real strength," Marcus replied, "is cleaning floors for 18 months without complaint because your family needs you to. Everything else is just technique." The statistics spoke for themselves. In the year since the incident, discrimination complaints in MMA gyms nationwide down 67%, minority membership in combat sports up 89%, 47 trainers retrained under the Johnson Protocol, 47 gym owners suspended for discriminatory practices, a 94% approval rating for the Johnson Combat Discipline Protocol. As the sun set over Washington, Marcus Johnson, once invisible, now influential, continued his mission to transform how America understood strength, dignity, and second chances. If this story touched you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more real stories of hidden heroes finding justice and recognition. Share in the comments if you've ever misjudged someone based on their job or if you've been the person whose talents were overlooked. Remember, true character isn't about titles or positions, it's about how you treat others when you think no one important is watching.